Jason explains Bitcoin, use Android Pay to get free stuff, and nanobots help sperm find their way. All that and more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1429, recorded Friday, January 15th, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by NatureBox. NatureBox is dedicated to making smart, delicious snacking easy. They have over 100 ridiculously delicious snacks that get delivered directly to your doorstep. Visit naturebox.com/twit to get 50% off your first box now.
And by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost automated investment service that is the most sophisticated way for you to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or you're just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/TNT to sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/TNT.
And by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your home. Right now, get free expedited FedEx shipping when you go to ring.com/TNT.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about the tech news, drones, and Bitcoin,
VR,
and robots.
because we've got to get that in there every single day.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, today, maybe not, but anyways.
We'll see. I am Megan Morrone.
And I am Jason Howell. We've already told you all the things we're going to talk about today. Bitcoin kind of freaking me out a little bit.
You did your Bitcoin homework today.
I did a lot of Bitcoin homework. I'm not going to say that I know a lot about Bitcoin, but I understand it enough to kind of talk about it a little bit. Thankfully, our guest today also understands it probably to about the same level. Maybe a little bit more. Jonathan Strickland of How Stuff Works. How's it going, man?
That's a heck of an intro, Jason.
No, you know what it is? I'm giving you an out just in case I talk you up too much, and then we ask you some great question. You're like, oh man, why did he just ask me that question?
I hope he knows more, because while you were scratching, your head and banging your head against, I just watched his video how Bitcoin works. That's how I learn all things, how all stuff works.
Yeah, see?
Thank you.
It turns out. Yeah, go
How
for it.
Stuff Works is that is just that's my world, right? I write for How Stuff Works. I do podcasts and videos for them, and since that video was a year ago, it was approximately 51 weeks ago when I forgot all the information in that particular video.
And that's why I gave you an out, Jonathan. Just in case. It turns out Bitcoin qualifies as stuff. So I should have thought to check out How Stuff Works to find out a little bit more about Bitcoin when I was doing my research. Next time I'll remember to do that. Hey, why don't we talk a little bit about Bitcoin while we're kind of already talking about it? If you thought that Bitcoin was alive and well, you might actually be wrong, according to Mike Hearn, one of Bitcoin's biggest developers, who says that Bitcoin is a failed experiment. This after Mike spent more than 5 years developing for Bitcoin. He's become a vocal and prominent figure kind of in its development on the back end of things. This is a complicated thing. So, all right. So I spent a lot of time kind of learning more about the Bitcoin world and also about some of Mike's kind of problems here and why he's getting out of it. So I'll attempt to do my real quick kind of run through of exactly what he's talking about here. So starting with blockchain. Blockchain basically is the ledger of all of these Bitcoin transactions. It keeps all that data, right? There's a limit on how many transactions that the blockchain can process every single second. And when it comes to currency, you don't want to put limits like that onto currency, because basically what that means is you're limiting the growth of that currency. That limit can actually be raised by certain members of the community if they support that. Mike, of course, has fought for a long time to make that happen. But he's run into a number of roadblocks along the way, and that's basically failed. He blames the community, says that information suppression is kind of at the core of the issue because, there were denial of service attacks on him, all these things that happened to kind of stifle what he was trying to do here in increasing that. He also blames centralization of the power over Bitcoin. Turns out 2 Chinese miners are controlling more than 50% of the hashing power, here's another little term for you. Hashing power basically is the speed at which these transactions can be processed. So all of these things kind of together, Mike, he's no stranger to the Bitcoin world. Obviously, after 5 years, he was working for Google. And then a couple of years ago, stopped working for Google to kind of devote his time full time to Bitcoin. And now he's getting out of it. So that's what people are all talking about. There's my Bitcoin 101. That's all I know. What do you guys know?
That's not bad, Jason. That's actually pretty good. Okay, so to dive in it just a little further to kind of explain what Mike's problem is here. So imagine that you want to purchase something in a store and you're going to use a credit card, just a regular credit card to do it. And you take it up to the cashier and you hand over your credit card and it is swiped or there's the chip and pin, whatever the mechanism is, doesn't really matter. But there's a delay in the verification of that transaction. You can't just say, well, it's going to clear. Just let me go with my stuff. You're going to have to wait until either it gets cleared or you get an error and they say, well, I'm sorry, we can't accept this form of payment. That's the problem that Bitcoin could encounter because, as you were pointing out, it's limited in the number of transactions it can process. The whole system can process. So we're talking somewhere around 3 to 7 transactions per second. If it gets more than that, then there's a bottleneck. And that transaction ends up being verified through these miners that you were mentioning, the Bitcoin miners. That the actual process of verifying transactions is what creates these blocks of data that make up the blockchain you had mentioned. And each blockchain is dependent in part on the previous blockchain, or block rather, in the chain. And what happens is you ultimately get a very difficult computational problem that must be solved for the newest block to be added to the end of that chain. With that bottleneck, the fact that the blocks are limited to 1 megabyte in size, with that bottleneck, you cannot scale up anymore. So you can't make Bitcoin a valid global currency that's being used by millions of people regularly. It is going to be limited to this much smaller niche. And one could argue that at that point, it doesn't really have much value as a currency. In fact, I've been arguing since the beginning that due to the volatility of Bitcoin, it has largely been more like a commodity than a currency. I would have been terrified to spend Bitcoin for fear that the amount I spend one day, the value of that amount would have increased dramatically the following day.
So your candy bar would end up costing you $5,000.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Spend it on a candy bar and 3 days later, suddenly it's worth $5,000 what you just spent.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the hope was that Bitcoin would be this decentralized, stateless form of currency that, because of the very nature of the system, was going to be verified through the process of getting more of the currency out into circulation. It's a really clever idea, but without that stabilization, without the scalability, it can't really be an effective currency. That's what Mike is arguing. Community members argue that if it were to grow larger, the needs of transmitting all that data, so these individual blocks get bigger in data size, that would make it harder for miners and for the system to support it, and you would be narrowed down to just a few big players that would be part of the Bitcoin network, and you would essentially have a purely centralized form of currency again, except in this case, instead of it being states, it would be corporations, stuff like Visa and MasterCard. And so those are the two sides that are arguing against each other. The point being that if things don't change, we're not going to see any real growth in the Bitcoin community because the very technology can't support it.
Right.
So let me ask you a question here. When I read I saw your video and you say like currency it only requires us to believe in it. So that's what that's what you were saying. You're holding up the dollar and saying we have to believe in it. And so this is hard for us to believe in. What makes it harder for us to believe in it is when someone comes out who's a part of Bitcoin, an integral part, and throws this thing on Medium that says, I don't believe in it anymore. And so the rest of us, I know that probably more journalists and regular people are unlike you, Jason. They didn't spend the entire day trying to understand Bitcoin. All they did was say, look at this post on Medium.
Right.
I am going to write a headline in the New York Times or wherever that says Bitcoin is over. And so then we're all not believing it. I mean, to what extent is that just the belief system, the important part of this story?
It's a huge part. I mean, if confidence is diminished in Bitcoin, then the value is going to decrease. We only give value to things we believe have value. There's nothing intrinsic about a Bitcoin that gives it value. It's that we've all agreed that it has value. And Bitcoin blows a lot of people's minds because it's not a physical thing. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind the fact that most giant money transfers have nothing to do with physical currency exchanging places. But because it doesn't have the equivalent of paper currency, it's harder for people to get a grip on already, which might explain some of the volatility in that price, where we saw it escalating to triple digits and higher at one point, and then drastically dropping later on, and finally reaching a little bit of stability. So as that confidence goes away, the community suffers more strife, and the viability of the currency as a whole suffers. This is where we move away from technology and just into finance and psychology.
Yeah, right.
It's just the way people think. And if we all just agreed as a group of people tomorrow that gold, the substance of gold, no longer had any real value to it, it would just be a thing, right? We wouldn't be able to buy and sell. It's crazy, but that's true. And the same thing's true with Bitcoin.
Yeah, and it's like the history of gold having value reinforces it having value. Just by the fact that it's been that way for so long. Bitcoin's so new, it kind of works in the opposite direction. It's very easy to disregard it because, it's new, it doesn't have value, it doesn't have that history. This $5 bill, I carry it in my wallet because I know that I could go anywhere, show it to them, and that's going to give me something. Bitcoin is, you're right. It's not a tangible thing, so it's a lot more difficult to do that, especially because it seems so complicated, not just as a currency, but as a technology item. It's hidden, and there's so many of these components, these concepts that are kind of new to understand. So as a currency, this is easy to understand. I have this. I give it to you, you give me that thing. With Bitcoin, there's so much more to that, especially the value, which it's some, in the hundreds to even equal, a smaller amount. Is that right? I can't remember what the conversion is, but it's so far out of whack that it's hard for me to even think about the numbers and know exactly how much that's worth.
And that a Bitcoin could be divisible up to 100 billion times makes it also difficult. Like you sit there and think, I have 1/100th millionth of a Bitcoin. How much is that? It's really something that is difficult to grasp without really diving in and looking into it more deeply. Same is actually true of quote unquote real currency or physical currency, right? That $5 that you have represents a certain value. We've agreed upon that value. It's backed by the US government and banks. But when you get down to it, how did that $5 come into being? It wasn't because we printed more $5 bills. It was through the process of creating wealth through loans and through things like that. And when you start diving down into finance, it starts to make my eyes hurt from the inside. So this is to the point where I'm like, all right, this is the limit of my understanding because people are weird, y'all.
Yeah. You know what? I think we got there. As a team, I think we got there. I think we got where we needed to go.
Yeah, I don't think anyone saying this is the end of Bitcoin.
No.
But
there's a lot of people saying like,
we're not saying that.
Well, we're certainly not saying that. And there's a lot of people that are reading this and going, yes, I understand where, what his perspective is, but that is absolutely not true. So.
All right, so let's move on. A security researcher from Synack says Apple's OS X Gatekeeper is still vulnerable, even after 2 patches. Gatekeeper is Apple's way of not letting malicious apps install in OS X, but the researcher says he reverse engineered the patch and you can still exploit it. In fact, the hole wasn't even patched at all. Apple just blocked some apps that were exploiting the hole. So, Jonathan, what do you think about this?
I think Apple needs to patch that properly. So the problem that's at the heart of this is that you've got a vulnerability where an app that is accepted, you could do a man-in-the-middle attack. You could swap out some of the code of that accepted app so that it allows an app that normally would not be accepted to kind of piggyback along, and you can introduce malware into that. To me, the thing that blows my mind with this story is that when I started covering technology, talking about malware on an Apple-based platform would have gotten you laughed out of a building.
And
It's such a different world.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, some people will still, I mean, some diehards will still say, you know, there's no way that, you know, that you can get malware on an Apple device, which is obviously not true. But it sort of feels like some people are still at Apple are still thinking this way. Like, why not patch? I mean, why didn't they patch it? Why would they just leave it and just, you know, go the other way and just deny the apps? I mean, that seems silly.
I imagine that the underlying answer is that patching the vulnerability without breaking things further down the line is something they're still trying to figure out. And so in the meantime, there's a patchy patch, which is just, okay, bouncer for gatekeeper, these are the people you are absolutely not allowed to let into the party. They cannot come in. And when we find more, we'll add those names to the list. But eventually we're going to fix this so that no one who is trying to hide can actually get through. I imagine that that's what's actually going on, because no company is really just going to be super cavalier and ignore a security vulnerability that has the potential of causing a great deal of harm, particularly to your reputation. And so I imagine that it's not through malice or laziness.
Yes.
It's more probable that they just haven't sorted it all out yet, but you can't really communicate that out to the public either. You have to say, we're doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Speaking of Apple, actually, thanks to SB Sheridan in the TNT subreddit for this one. Apple is in the midst of an investigation by the European Commission, of course. It's looking at its tax policies. Bloomberg Intelligence has analyzed the situation to come up with a potentially hefty outcome for Apple. $8 billion in back taxes could possibly be owed, according to their analysis. Apple basically is being accused of receiving illegal tax deals from Ireland between 2004 and 2012. Of course, we heard, I think it was last month, that Tim Cook told Charlie Rose that claims saying Apple's accounting practices were problematic were total political crap, and that Apple pays every tax dollar that we owe. I just wanted to say that out loud.
That's a great way of putting it. We pay everything we owe.
Everything we haven't gotten around and that we still owe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, these are, it's like fancy footwork in Ireland, and you know, it's not that they might end up having to pay these back taxes. They haven't really broken the law.
Right.
It would have been Ireland, you know, the Irish government that broke the law if they have to pay this. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Starbucks, McDonald's, and Amazon also under scrutiny, but we didn't hear about them in our.
No, we should know. Decision by March. So, you know, right around the corner. We'll go ahead and put that in our week ahead block for some future episode of Twit.
Well, Android Police reports that Google Play is finally rolling out promo codes in its App Store. I had no idea they didn't have them in their App Store. The new option in the Google Play Developers Console will allow creators to promote their apps with up to 500 free promo codes that they can generate per quarter. So according to the developer help page, unused codes do not roll over. Developers can hand out codes for any paid app or game, as well as in-app purchase content. However, you cannot create codes for subscription content.
Okay.
So yeah, this is just developers being able to say, here's a promo code, try out my app. The Apple Store has had the App Store has had that for a long time.
Like doing what I've done here at Twit, kind of, you know, on All About Android and talking about Android on the network over the years. If developers wanted to give me access to an app, I usually ended up getting some sort of email from them with a link to an APK file, which is basically the application to install on the side, to side load onto the device. And one would expect that that's probably not the wisest way to pass around apps. I mean, you know, it's kind of prone for piracy, number one. If somebody else gets a hold of that APK, there's nothing stopping them from installing it. It's also probably not the most secure way. Sure, I trust developers that send me their apps if they have a good, you know, development history, and I'll install with a little bit of, you know, precaution in that regard. But it's probably not the best idea in the world to get an APK file and just install it willy-nilly, through email. So this is a great alternative to that. It's not something that I ever missed because I just never, because we haven't ever had it on Android. So we were talking before the show and you're like, wait a minute, you've never had that? I'm like, I don't know. I guess I didn't know I needed it, but that's nice.
Now you have it, whether you needed it or not.
Oh, hey, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Jason, I think you're missing an opportunity to have outrage over the fact that you didn't have something you didn't know you didn't have.
I'm so angry I didn't know I needed that. Hey, check this out. This is actually pretty cool. Google really, really, really wants you to use Android Pay, and they launched something called Tap 10 to prove it. Their new promo rewards you in stuff every time you use Android Pay to pay for something over the next couple of months. And what is that stuff? If you use your Android Pay for the first time, second time, and the sixth time, you're going to get a free song each time from Google Play. So, your pick, whatever. If you get up to 10 taps, which could be pretty easy to do, you get a promo code to redeem for a free Chromecast. I'm hoping that also means I could get a Chromecast audio because that's what I would get, because I need another Chromecast audio. But that's a $35 value right there. So use Android Pay 10 times, get $35, get an awesome device. I mean, the Chromecast, without a doubt, and particularly Chromecast audio for last year, is one of my favorites of recent devices.
I used Apple Pay twice already today, and I got nothing.
Yeah, see?
Nothing but my lunch.
Apple doesn't love you enough to give you an iPhone.
Oh,
when you
I guess.
You're just lucky you didn't end up with another U2 album.
It's true. Yeah. Absolutely true.
They give you things when you don't use Apple Pay.
Well, Mary J. Foley reports that the elusive iOS bridge appears to be closer to reality. That's the tool that Microsoft announced, I think almost a year ago, that will help developers port their iOS apps over to Windows Phone. You'll remember last year there was a big push, some crazy stuff that, they want everyone. They created a lot of interesting iOS apps, Microsoft did, and now they want those any iOS apps to be able to easily be ported over to the Windows Phone. If you're a developer, you can sign up to use the tool now.
Yeah, they had kind of ambitions to do this with Android apps as well.
Yeah, I think that was called the Astoria Bridge.
And that's kind of fading into the background. I don't even know if Microsoft has officially acknowledged necessarily that they're not doing that anymore. But a lot, including Mary Jo Foley from this network, have said that they've all but kind of stopped doing that at this point. So that's kind of a bummer. But good to see for other platforms. Mm-hmm. And that old friend Wikipedia is turning into a young adult. Today marks 15 years since Wikipedia was launched, almost as long since many of us stopped using actual encyclopedias because, the internet is always right? Isn't that what they say? To celebrate, Wikimedia announced the Wikimedia Endowment as a source of funding for the site to aim for around $100 million over 10 years' time. And I don't know if that necessarily means we won't see those things at the top of Wikipedia pages asking you to donate, but I suppose it's a good direction to go.
Yeah, this is Wikipedia, and Wikimedia by extension has had a really interesting story. I mean, people could argue that it's one of decline, actually, as the editorial pool has grown thin compared to where it was 10 years ago. Largely due to two factors. One, editing with the Wikipedia language is clunky. You have to learn how this almost arcane language works in order to properly edit a document. Which means that if you do not properly edit a document, even if all your information is correct, it's likely to be completely removed by the rest of the community, which is very frustrating for a new editor. So the barrier to become an editor at Wikipedia is very high due to the steep learning curve and also sometimes the unwelcoming kind of nature of the rest of the community. Also, more people are using handheld devices to access the internet. And I don't know if you've ever tried to edit a Wikipedia article with a handheld device, but it's probably a punishment in some states.
There aren't many times that I really want to pull out my handheld device and do an email, let alone a Wikipedia entry. It's just not my preferred way on that tiny little screen to do long form things with, brackets and whatever, that Wikipedia posts require. So yeah, I completely agree.
I think that Wikipedia is a little bit old-fashioned. I have a Wikipedia page from when I was on Tech TV, and then I think no one's ever gone and bothered to get rid of it because I don't have a verified Twitter or verified Facebook or anything. Like I feel like
you've got a page on Wikipedia.
I'm old-fashioned. Yeah, there it is. And that picture probably 15 years old. But if someone wants to go in there and change it, feel free. But yeah, it's getting a little bit old-fashioned. I think it's interesting because there's more content on the internet. Is the content better? Like, do we care that the content is accurate as much? I feel like we don't. I mean, there's so many things on Twitter, that people retweet that are completely historically not accurate. People don't really care. There's just people, I don't know that people want as much truth anymore.
Well, I certainly, as a writer for HowStuffWorks.com, hope people want truth and accuracy. One of the things that we stress to writers when they first start is that Wikipedia absolutely can't be a source, not because the content there is bad. It's generally very good, but you need to go to primary sources to source your articles for How Stuff Works. And also, just because of the nature of Wikipedia, there is always the chance that something has been changed or that we cite something that was listed on an article that later gets edited out, and then your site is no longer valid. So from my professional experience, Wikipedia is one of those things that I love to use in order to find interesting primary sources so I can go and investigate those. But I don't rely so much on the articles. I've also noticed the trend of people sharing stuff on Twitter or Facebook that with just one extra click, you could verify is not true or it's a hoax or, Snopes is always just a quick web jump away. I've certainly noticed that too. But I think that's more of the fact that we are used to the immediacy the internet gives us, the fact that we can voice our thoughts as soon as we have them. I know I've been guilty of that before reflecting on something, sharing it out with the world. I just think that's indicative of that particular part of human nature, not necessarily that we don't value validity anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, and I think it depends on the source too, right? Like Twitter, it's very easy to punch out 140 characters and not care whether it's true or not, because it's kind of like Twitter's like a knee-jerk sort of, service for sharing those thoughts that just appear. Wikipedia is known, or at least its ambition is to be accurate with information that is in some ways truthful and reference to something that can kind of prove those points. Doesn't always succeed, but that's what a lot of people expect out of it because that's been its goal for 15 years. So when it started in 2001, it was offering 6 languages. It's now to 280. And averages around 18 billion page views per month. No big deal. All right, coming up next, we welcome back Sam Machkovech to tell us about a few gaming stories from this past week. Some cool stuff there. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode, NatureBox. It's the AAA of snacks. You get hungry. You don't reach for, that half-eaten bag of potato chips or that cheese stick that's just hanging out on the countertop. I have personal experience of cheese sticks at our home that's half-eaten, left around all over the place. I have kids. That's what happens. Be afraid, soon-to-be parents. Be prepared with smart and delicious snacks from NatureBox instead. All of NatureBox's snacks are made with high-quality ingredients that you can trust. Trying to eat healthier does not have to mean that you give up on the flavor. Choose from over 100 unique, tasty options. We have a couple of boxes here filled with tasty options that are also unique.
I have the classic hummus, which I don't know if a lot of people have seen, but it's easy. You can bring it places.
See, the good thing about that is you just you get a few of them. You just go ahead and throw them in your lunch
perfect, good
in lunch bag to bring with pair it with a NatureBox, bag of chips, and there you go. Maybe the sriracha roasted cashews. Yeah. My favorite's the mini Belgian waffles. I want to take those Belgian waffles and like get like a little scoop of ice cream, put them in between. And,
Great idea.
So you can do all this stuff when you have a Nature Box. You can fill out your snack profile, get personalized recommendations based on your preferences. And the best part, Nature Box delivers right to your door. So you spend more time getting things done and less time searching through the couch for that last potato chip that you just can't find. It's at the bottom somewhere. It's crushed into like 5 pieces, but you don't care because you're hungry. Stop it.
Yeah,
Just
stop it.
stop doing that. Get a vacuum for that. Get yourself a Nature Box instead and eat that. Fuel your game engine with healthy snacks. Visit naturebox.com/twit. Get 50% off your first box now. You know that hunger dragon. It's coming for you. So you want to slay it with a sword of nutrition at naturebox.com/twit. Go there. Get 50% off your first box of delicious. Sorry, I caught a glimpse of Jonathan from over my shoulder and it started making me laugh. Delicious personalized snacks sent directly to your doorstep. Jonathan, you need personal snacks delivered to your doorstep. I know it.
I'm not arguing. I was just I was just enjoying the metaphorical journey you took us on.
Slaying the
And two-
hunger dragon.
Guys, I'm on the East Coast. It's dinner time over
Okay,
here.
sorry.
You're killing me.
If I could send you a box of Nature Box through this Skype here, if I could do it, I would. But yes, exactly. Oh, see, you're enjoying it right now. All right.
All right, well, it's Friday. That means we get to visit with Sam Machkovech, culture editor at Ars Technica, for our weekly gaming check-in. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It's going well. So EA just launched a $5 monthly subscription plan to access Vault PC games. What do you think so far?
Oof. Well, they've done a couple of these things, the most notable being on Xbox One, where if you were already paying the annual fee for Xbox Live Gold, they wanted you to pay an additional $30 a year or $5 a month to access 4 to 5 quote-unquote Vault games, which are usually sports games from older years, you know, the ones that you see at GameStop for about $3 a pop. And also, the more intriguing thing was that they allowed you first trial access, is what they called it, where you could download the complete full retail copy of a game that's not out yet in stores for free. That would be this really nice perk that you could then apply that, not only what you played, your save progress, to if you purchased the game. And then you would get a small discount for that full game purchase on top of that. So that they have brought to PC now, where you can pay $5 a month and do this on Windows PCs, not Mac, through the Origin game shop, which is like Steam, but with fewer games. They have 15 games in their vault now for $5 a month. They don't have an annual version of it yet. You have to pay the $5 a month. And right now, there's not that much stuff. It is, as expected, a lot of older games that you could pretty much pick up for $5, $6, $7 a pop. There's also versions of games that have no DLC. So, example, Battlefield 4, you'll see out there. Oh, Battlefield 4, I'd love to play that. Well, it's missing all of its DLC with the Vault access. You have to then go in and individually pay for that, which makes it a hard sell for these multiplayer games because some of them live and die by these map packs. The rest, as you can see there, an older version of FIFA, older versions of Dragon Age and Dead Space and SimCity. It's, as of right now, kind of a dumping ground. But they're promising third-party games, and they're promising more titles. I think EA could stand to lose a little bit of PC gaming money in order to gain some goodwill. So it'd be interesting to see if that vault increases and if these sort of first trial demos of unreleased games really gets people going.
And so if the games are there, if you see them there, does that mean they're going to stay there for sure?
That's the question I had for EA, and they very artfully said, we don't plan on removing any games.
There we go.
But because they wouldn't confirm, I do believe what that means is, unlike Xbox Live's Games with Gold and PlayStation Network's PlayStation Plus, those games in those subscription packages you get forever. It sounds like EA Access is not going to do the same thing.
So it sounds like you are really, really pumped up about this thing.
It's honestly, PlayStation Plus really changed the game, as it were, for these sorts of monthly subscription services. You get so much free stuff that's not just 1 year, 2 years old. Some indie games have launched on services like PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live Games with Gold. So EA has a lot of expectation because of those services to compete with, and it's not really doing a good job of drawing third parties into Origin. People on PCs are really sticking to Steam because it just has everything. And it has incredible sales all the time. Their winter sale we just looked at I want to say, I don't know about double the sales of the last winter sale, but they switched from sorry, I could go on about Steam sales. I really like Steam. So Origin has a lot to do. This could have been a really good move. So far, it's not quite getting my goat just yet, but we'll see what EA has in store for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I guess it's early days. Moving on to something else here. Tim Stevens from CNET was on the show yesterday. He mentioned that Amazon Prime has a pretty good thing going for gamers. What's that all about?
So Amazon Prime had already given you the option to get the game the day it came out. So instead of worrying about when you buy a game on Amazon, it's going to be slower than going to the store, now they say, well, you have Prime, you'll be able to get it immediately. Well, now they're topping that with an additional 20% off those pre-orders and those first 2 weeks of purchases. So the hot new games coming out, instead of going to Target or Best Buy or any sort of brick and mortar, you can just expect Amazon to give you 20% off whatever its lowest new game price is. So that's going to bring you down to close to $50 per game, which is what games used to cost when they came out new. Before the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 said, we're going to charge $10 more, and everyone said, sure. And so Amazon really wants you to give a crap about Prime. That's a very good way to do it, because people who are willing to buy retail price for that first week, you're going to get it, unless you're the kind of freak who wants to be there for a midnight launch, dressed up as your favorite Dead Space character. You're going to probably be pretty fine with, showing up at 4 p.m. on release day and saving that money. So smart move on their part. They're going to really move a lot of games, and they really want you to think of Amazon as a games destination. They've been pushing a lot with their app stores on Android in particular. The underground deals where you get to play for free, and the developer of the game gets paid by every minute you play, as this sort of thing. They really know what to do they can afford it, and that's a pretty smart move on their part to be the #1 destination for first week games.
So you also wrote this week about a game that's getting a lot of buzz. It's That Dragon Cancer. It's an autobiographical game about a family dealing with cancer. I wish I could tell you more about the game, but I could not even get through the preview without crying, and I'm serious. You have to tell me about it, because I can't say anything else.
So I've had a lot of experience with it, because I think I was at the very first expo that the creators came and showed it off. I actually was invited. There's a website I love called unwinnable.com. Check it out if you get a chance. They do a lot of cool events around the nation for indie game expos. And they had one. So normally with a game demo, a games journalist, whatever, if you want to call me that, gets to sit down in like a crowded expo hall with lots of gunshots and laser sounds. It sounds like an insane arcade. These guys opted to show this off at a house in a bedroom with low lighting, and they actually had a box of tissues next to the computer. And I thought, oh my God, what am I in for? And it was incredible and powerful and sad. The scene was you clicking around. In fact, the image that was just shown of a man holding a child, it was that scene where you're in a hospital room with a sick child crying. You don't have any backstory when you play that demo version, and you get a little bit more in the final game of essentially clicking around to get the story to go through, but not to actually change or fix anything wrong with the child. There's no press A to make this child happier. It's kind of the pain that any parent, of a sick child or just got the flu or has, in this case, terminal cancer, that was the experience I'd played, and I thought I'd never seen anything like it. So I've been following this game for a couple of years. There's a documentary about it called Thank You for Playing. The most recent episode of Radiolab focused entirely on it, on its development and its creation. It's a narrative game, meaning there's no challenge, there's no puzzles. It's about interacting with the game world to see different parts of the story. You can choose to interact with this boy, his name's Joel, in different ways, interact with the parents in different ways, read different letters in different ways. So as a result, game is technically an applicable word, but I definitely want to call it a narrative experience. Yeah.
It's interesting because this totally ties into some of the topics from last week and earlier this week when we're talking about, kind of like technology as used to kind of, allow you to tap into this kind of empathy aspect of things. There was the exoskeleton to kind of humble you into knowing what it's like to be afflicted by certain conditions that make it more difficult to move and all this kind of stuff. It's not necessarily what you think about initially as like, I'm going to sit down and play a game, but some people, there is a desire to kind of connect with that kind of empathy side. And I don't think it comes from the same place as sitting down to play a video game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have its place, right?
Yeah, I mean, but historically, I mean, when games have come out like this, Depression Quest comes to mind. When they're not the standard game that everyone is used to, we have a lot of gamers that get really upset about that. And there's no exception of this. The Steam community is mostly wonderful people, but there are bad eggs everywhere, including in the comment section. And what was interesting is the creators of the game said that they weren't deleting or closing any of the threads, no matter what horrible things people were writing about the game. So talk a little bit about that. What do you make of that?
I think this game is so hard on its sleeve. When I say autobiographical in my review of it, I mean that more than most any game, because it's so rare that you see a game's creators render themselves, render their children, include their own recordings, field recordings of their family spending time together. They really are going unfiltered with this. Christianity plays hugely into this game, which is also something you don't really see. You see a lot of games in which life is just sort of tossed around, but it's so rare that you see faith really take center stage in a game. So I think ultimately, if you as a creator are going to try and censor and try and mess and control anything in the way of trolling, you miss the point. I assume they're looking at things and saying, what's the point of a filter? We didn't have a filter. And ultimately, comment threads don't exist in this game unless you count. They ask people to submit their own stories about grief and about loss and about cancer. And you can actually find those in the game. You can click around in some of the rooms and there will be just hundreds of these cards that you can click on and read the stories at your own pace. And I think to that extent, they said, all right, we can control the comment thread and we can use it as a narrative asset.
Well, Sam, stick around because we have another game that has touched the nerve of a lot of people. You might have a comment or two about that. Jason, did you want to?
Yeah. So yesterday we asked for your feedback, basically, everyone that listens and watches this show, about the Stolen app for iOS that was unceremoniously shut down yesterday by its developer. We heard from Elliot, who has this to say. Take it away, Elliot.
Hi, my name's Elliot Kovacs. I am from Boston, Massachusetts, and I think the Stolen app is crazy, and it is insane, and I never think it should have been published. I think that's kind of obvious. The developer should have seen it. And also, I just have one question. If I'm on Android, okay, and I didn't download the app, does that mean someone can still steal my account? Thanks, Elliot. Big fan, love the show. Bye.
Bye. Peace out.
I love that Elliot might be, 45 years old as far as we know, but he sounds young, which I just love because it's like, that's what we were talking about with Stolen. It's like not everybody understands this, what was going on there. So if you haven't been watching the show, it was an app that took the Twitter API and then people could trade people's personalities back and forth. So it was more, it was the words they used were buying and selling people. And that obviously wasn't the greatest use of words.
A vocabulary to describe it, maybe?
It touched a nerve with a lot of people. And then it was used for harassment in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, what it sounds like Elliot is asking is it possible that the Stolen game can actually steal your account information, which is what I gathered from that. Whether you're Android or not, if you have a Twitter account, you would have been inside the game to be traded, I suppose, in air quotes. I never played it myself personally, being on Android, but they don't actually have access to your account. So there's that. You can rest rest well tonight, Elliot, knowing that your Twitter account is not in harm's way. But we should ask both of you guys, since we have you on. Sam, kind of what were your thoughts on this as a game? Because this was a game, and as you know probably better than anyone, games sometimes kind of cross the line into a world where it's not about, it touches a nerve, basically. It goes from being fun to touching a lot of nerve. What do you think
Honestly,
about that?
When I think about this, it's less of a game and it feels more like a product of Chan culture. When I say Chan culture, I think of 4chan and 8chan as these sort of crazy communities that can take people's lives, identities, and just turn them into memeified objects of ridicule and things that just become completely outside of their original selves. Especially at Chanology, the attacks on Scientology did this a lot, and people sort of shrug their shoulders and go, well, we don't like Scientology either, that's fine. And a lot of follow-up campaigns that have produced a lot of harassment on the internet have really followed up on, snowballed on these sort of crazy, confusing worlds in which people's identities are in some ways just copied and pasted. Sometimes they're photos, sometimes their own words twisted, sometimes their personal information like addresses. So when I saw this app pop up, I was immediately concerned at the idea that, oh, some jerk could buy or sell, for example, the creator of Depression Quest, the developer Zoe Quinn. Her profile could immediately be bought and sold and edited and taken advantage of. So I don't see it as much of a game, because to me, a game has a sense of the interactivity really telling us something special, us coming together and sharing something that has at least some sort of curation, some sort of choreography. This to me is a lot more of an internet forum explosion of, and that doesn't mean it has to be negative, but it will. And that to me, and even this kid who asked this question, he could have sent an app response to the app's creators to say, I'm opting out, which was half of why it shut down, because the last day of its service was just, we're going to delete your account. We're going to delete your account. We're going to delete your account. Like, I mean, just that alone, it was not going to work. So I honestly, I don't see it as a game.
Jonathan, do you want to weigh in on this? Were you following this stolen app? I know you're Android as well as me. You know, we don't get access to these crazy games that get canceled, or apps that get canceled after 72 hours. But what did you think about it?
Golly gee willikers, I'm so sad. I agree wholeheartedly with what Sam was saying. He put it better than I could have. It has just the very thought of it is so dehumanizing, and it's so such the antithesis of my own personal philosophy and the way I try and live my life, that I just found it really off-putting is probably the gentlest way I can say it. I have been wholeheartedly behind the idea of extending the concept of compassion and sympathy, which is an uphill battle when you look at certain communities that are very much the opposite of that for the lulz. And this was one of those things that I agree. It really didn't feel more like a game. It just felt like we've created a tool to make trolling even easier.
Well, it's interesting because I was all for it, and it just really reminded me that, like, my experience is not the same as so many other people's experience. I've had my share of people. I don't even know if I'd call it harassment, but criticizing, saying horrible things about me on the internet. But that didn't happen to me in this game. Like that I don't have the level of someone like Zoe Quinn. That's not happening to me. So it's like what Motherboard had an amazing article about this, because it's like, this is not the internet of 2007. Like, sadly, it's not. We have a different internet. You can't just throw something out like this and say, like, it's a game, and and you can't say, like, don't opt in. It's because that's the kind of people that say, like, well, if you're harassed on Twitter, just don't be on Twitter. Like, you cannot say that to people anymore. It's a different world, which is sad. It's what we were talking about yesterday. I wish there were this sweet spot between preventing harassment, or at least reducing harassment, and not censoring everything, or not just getting rid of everything. And I do not know where that sweet spot is. I wish I knew.
Yeah.
I find that sweet spot at the neighborhood bar myself. Everybody on the internet has that opportunity.
And you did say you needed to go early. Is that where you're going, Sam? Do we need to let you go? Or you?
I'm actually going to go play Minecraft with a couple of children.
Okay.
I've got nephews in town.
Excellent.
Well, Sam, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have your opinion. And I guess we'll see you next Friday, Sam.
Absolutely. See you guys. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thank you. And thanks to Elliot. You can leave us a voicemail to be a part of the show as well. 260-TNT show is the number. Keep it short. I'd say 60 seconds at the absolute very most. Less than that, we'll do our best to play it on the show.
And up next, we will face our robot overlords, and it's going to be good. Turns out they're pretty good at keeping the place clean. Yeah. But first, let's take a minute to thank the second sponsor of this episode, Wealthfront. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Wealthfront. You know that you should be investing your money for the long term for you or your family's financial health, and you've probably wondered how you should do it. Trying to do it yourself, especially the right way, is complex and time-consuming. Luckily, there is Wealthfront. Traditional advisors charge huge fees between 1% and 3% of what you've got under management, plus hidden fees for transactions and changes. Wealthfront makes it easy for anyone to access world-class long-term investment management. You can get started investing today at a minimum of $500. It only takes a few minutes to sign up for an account at wealthfront.com, and it goes right to work monitoring your portfolios around the clock and taking action as soon as the opportunity arises. Their seamless software optimizes your investments for the best risk-adjusted return, net of taxes and fees. Now, we've heard from many of you that have used Wealthfront, and you love how you can diversify your portfolios and buy stocks from in-demand companies like all the companies we talk about, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, all commission-free. Wealthfront is transparent and accessible. You can view all your accounts in one place, whether they're personal, joint, or retirement. You can also see every trade that Wealthfront makes on your behalf in your dashboard, on your desktop, or with their mobile app. Their sophisticated investment strategies like tax loss harvesting and direct indexing optimize your after-tax returns while simultaneously lowering your tax bill. With Wealthfront, you pay 0.25% a year. That's 25 basis points, zero commissions, and no hidden fees. That's less than $5 a month to invest a $30,000 account. There are no additional charges for any of Wealthfront's services. Wealthfront manages over $2.6 billion in client assets, and it's grown over 20 times in the past 2 years. So what are you waiting for? Invest in your future today with Wealthfront. Visit wealthfront.com/TNT to sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. You'll see the customized allocation they recommend for your profile. And just for Twit listeners, if you sign up to invest, Wealthfront will manage your first $15,000 entirely free of charge for life. Join the many Twit fans who have seen huge success with Wealthfront and claim your offer today at wealthfront.com/TNT.
That's right. Do it. Because you might have to answer to the robots someday. This next section is called Robots Do the Darndest Things. For example, what is the first thing you want your robot to do for you? That's right, the things you really don't want to do. Mm-hmm. That's probably at least part of the reason that researchers created Atlas, a humanoid robot that placed second in DARPA's Robotics Challenge. To keep it challenged and active, its human creators taught it how to sweep the floor and vacuum.
Now, Atlas is terrifying, but weirdly not while it's sweeping.
Yeah.
No. Guys, do you not remember the valuable lessons taught to us in the Karate Kid documentaries? They're teaching this robot how to do karate and kung fu.
I
sweep the leg.
Got it. Okay, got it. I was slow, but yeah.
One thing I wanted to say is, first of all, Atlas is sort of like a robotics platform. It was actually used by several of the teams in the DARPA Grand Challenge. A lot of different teams used the robot as their base, and then all the software they developed was what allowed the robot to move around. And while I make a joke about teaching robots karate and kung fu, the truth of the matter is that certain things that are very easy for your typical human to do still remain a big challenge for robots, like maintaining balance and shifting forward when you have to make a certain type of movement. These are actually very tricky. And the Grand Challenge taught us that, because there were a lot of different, very simple tasks that robots just would fall over while attempting to do, like walking through a doorway. And being able to make sure that your technology is working the way you intended is obviously critical in all forms of tech. But with robotics in particular, this is still a very young discipline as technology goes. So very important to have these kind of tasks to sort of test out the capabilities of your future death machine.
Yeah, you watch these compilations. When I watch these compilations, I can basically hear the Benny Hill theme playing in my mind as I watch it.
Yeah. There's something inside me that dies a little every time.
Yeah.
It just hurts to see it. But it is a good demonstration of how robotics, it's amazing how far it's advanced, but we're still at the level where it's much easier to design a robot that is specifically meant to do a single task. It's easy to make a robot that does that fairly well. Mm-hmm. It's harder to make a robot that does it really well, like demonstrably at least as well as or better than a human. And then it's orders of magnitude more difficult to design a robot that can do lots of stuff well, not just one thing. And I think that's a fascinating area of study. I've talked about it a lot on my various shows. And so even though there is something comical about seeing Atlas sweeping the floor, I totally get it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even the researchers say that the reason for those tasks is not that they are lazy. Of course, they're going to say that. But it's so that they can push new code through to kind of keep it working, keep it kind of, busy. Like they're tasking the robot with sweeping the floors because they want to keep it busy. They don't want it to get lazy and get soft. No. Essentially, is what they're saying. So
no, it is amazing though that like you could teach a child. It's like the grasping the penny in your pocket. That's the thing that's like easy for a 2 or 3 year old, but for a robot, it's harder. Yep. So I have another robot story. We hope that these robots don't fail. They have one task. You have one job, nanobots. Christina Bonington over at Refinery 29 had this story today. Tiny robot suits that sperm wear to guide them where they need to go. Fortune also wrote about these advances, but they call them tiny robot chauffeurs for the sperm. They lead the sperm to the place they need to eventually go, which is the egg, if you didn't know.
I heard that somewhere.
They lose their way. Mobility is a problem.
Whoa.
So here's how it works. If you're watching the video, you can see a little bit how it works. They coat the sperm. Researchers are coating the sperm in microscopic...
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for the Benny Hill theme. I wondered if that was going to happen.
Microscopic metal polymers that they can adjust their movements with magnets. You can do this inside a woman or in a petri dish. It's a new method of fertilization. It was performed in Germany's Institute for Integrative Nanosciences in Dresden. Do you care to comment on this, Jason or Jonathan?
I'm just kind of amazed at what we're watching here, that this is even possible. This stuff blows me away. I don't have much more than that.
I somewhat object to the term robot only because I think of it more as almost like a capsule. Like if you put me in a big metal capsule and then you use magnetic fields to push me around, you wouldn't say I was Iron Man. I wouldn't be in a robotic suit or anything along those lines. That being said, I think the technology is phenomenal. And it's another example of a lot of tech in the nano world, nano and micro world, where we're using things like magnetic fields or even ultrasonic frequencies to manipulate very tiny things to go where we want them to go. So I gotta admit, I never would have thought of this particular implementation, and it's actually really cool.
Yeah. And apparently it's cheaper than in vitro fertilization and artificial insemination, which are expensive. So that was the idea, to bring that price down.
Okay, well then, Jonathan, if you object with that being called a robot, I think you'll be at home again here. Robots often have harsh metallic frames, as we all know, uncovered by skin. As humans, the skin serves many purposes, but one thing we have over robots is the ability to remember sensory information when we touch or grab anything. Researchers in Singapore are working on this and have created a flexible artificial skin that detects electrical resistance when its robotic hands apply force on an object. That data is stored for up to 1 week in a thin memory device along with that. So, it's kind of talking about pulling the coin out of the pocket, right? Like that's an action that very fine motor skill action that we know. Our hands in our pocket, that's a coin. We can feel the ridges on the coin, so we know that that's what we're reaching for when we pull it out. Robots don't necessarily have that sense, and even if they have that sense, they don't necessarily have the memory to remember that the next time that they reach in and go, oh yeah, that's the coin I put in my pocket. So this is a way of kind of enhancing that, or just enabling that to begin with.
It's actually really, really cool, the idea of using something similar to capacitance touchscreens, the change of electrical resistance in order to indicate the amount of pressure that the robotic hand or whatever limb is placing upon various objects. And then you could couple that with machine learning to teach a robot the threshold of pressure that is appropriate for any given type of object. So that way you can pick up a nice big object and use the right amount of pressure, and or you could pick up something very delicate and make sure it doesn't go squish, just like grape, to go back to our Karate Kid.
Thanks for bringing it back to Karate Kid.
Yeah.
I'm happy we can get back there.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, you have amazing stuff that you write on howstuffworks.com and lots of stuff about robots. So thank you for joining us. Now we have TNT's fan of the day who just cannot work without tech news blasting into his ears. He's here is at CT Heg on Twitter, riding what appears to be a forklift, perhaps a dune buggy of some sort. I don't know what he's riding, but I can only assume that those headphones are blasting the smooth, soft sounds of tech news today.
They must be.
Yes. So you can send your how you watch. Just use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT. Record a video, a picture, send it, put it on Google+, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are, we will find it.
I'm really happy when he was going backwards that he didn't run into something.
I am glad.
Apparently, he knows what he's doing, and that's a good thing.
Yes,
I can only imagine that we make him better at his job.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully that story about the robot sperm wasn't too disturbing.
Yeah, that could throw you off a little bit. Oh, that's him. That's him in the security footage that we've just captured somewhere. Oh, man, he was listening to Tech News Today, and this is just a disaster. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we did that to you. Up next, you want to travel to space, but you don't want to go wearing whatever that is. We've got a solution to your sad space clothes. But first, let's take a minute to thank the third sponsor of this episode, the Ring Video Doorbell. My doorbell, Megan's doorbell. We use the Ring Video Doorbell, and we love it. We're all familiar with, the sound of a boring traditional doorbell, and this is different. But basically, that means that a package is being delivered, friends are coming over for dinner. It's the sound of someone, no big deal, just planning to rob you. Wait a minute, what? Over 95% of home break-ins happen during the day. Burglars almost always start by ringing your doorbell to see if someone's home before rifling through all of your stuff and taking the things they like. With the Ring Video Doorbell, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere around the world using your smartphone. And it sounds like that. That's what it sounds like right out of the box. You see there's a little camera up there. So they ring, it calls through to your cell phone, your smartphone, and that camera passes the video along to you so you can see who's there and check in on him. Advanced motion detection that can alert you even if someone doesn't ring the doorbell. You have full settings for that. With the Ring Video Doorbell, you can talk to delivery people, keep an eye on the package that they're dropping off. If someone tries to mess with it, you can get an instant alert. And like I said, HD video of the whole thing, jump on there and yell at them. It's like having a neighbor keep an eye on your home around the clock. Installing Ring takes minutes, and it works with either your current wiring or a built-in rechargeable battery. I installed it in just a few minutes. It was very easy to do. Put your mind at ease and protect your home with the Video Doorbell. Time Magazine and USA Today named one of their top 10 gadgets of 2015. Go to ring.com/TNT for free expedited FedEx shipping. That's ring.com/TNT. With Ring, you are always home, even when you're doing TNT. I'm home right now. No big deal. Virgin Galactic might get all the headlines for the simple fact that it's aiming to bring space tourism to us non-astronauts, or rather non-astronauts with big piles of cash. But what are you going to wear when you meet space for the first time? Virgin Galactic is collaborating with Adidas and Yohji Yamamoto to produce prototype flight suits and boots for you and me. It's activewear for the futurist. What do we think? Is this sleek? Is this stylish, Jonathan?
It looks like it's about a step removed from the vault jumpsuits in Fallout, so I'm fully on board.
I gotta say, I like those. I like the shoes.
I like that further down we have that guy with all the chains hanging out of his pocket. And I'm thinking, well, in microgravity, that could be a lot of fun.
Might not be a good idea, though. You got to be careful. But I guess you want things chained to you, right? And
right.
Yeah, in those situations.
So I mean, I thought Matt Damon's outfit was perfect in The Martian. I don't need anything better than that.
So you're saying The Martian had this figured out well before Virgin Galactic?
Yeah.
All right. See, that almost looks like you, Jonathan Strickland.
Almost. I can dare to dream.
That's you walking to the hangar, getting ready to go to space.
I would like your next.
Like I got the right stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like your next video to start off just like that,
and then actually go to
do.
Good guy. Well, Jonathan,
I definitely do that.
We've talked about how stuff works, but what are you working on? What else are you working on? Where can people find you? What do you have that's new?
Sure. So one thing that we launched late 2015 that's starting to get some real traction is called How Stuff Works Now. It's actually at now.howstuffworks.com. Unlike How Stuff Works website, where we have our kind of our evergreen material about how various things work, Now is more about breaking stories, emerging trends, our analysis of them. I'm one of several writers and hosts who work on that. We're really, really excited by it. And also, my show Forward Thinking has just started its 4th season. We went on a bit of a hiatus, but we're back now. We actually recorded 2 new podcasts for the audio portion just 2 days ago. So those will be live next week. But the video is already going strong. So if you were a fan of Forward Thinking, or you just like to hear about an optimistic view of the future, go check that out.
And is that at FW Thinking, or is that?
That is it.
FW. Okay,
FW Thinking.
We're breaking down the tech from the Martian, but not the fashion, I see.
Yeah.
No, I would hesitate to ever give anyone any kind of note on fashion.
All right, fair enough. Jonathan, it's always a pleasure to get the chance to podcast with you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, take care, man. Monday's guest will be Lauren Hawkinson from The Next Web. She is awesome, and she will be here on Monday. TNT records live every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can also be a part of the show by emailing us to TNT at twitch.tv. I just suddenly forgot how to talk. Or leaving us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Tech News Today TV.
And don't forget to subscribe to the show. You can
infectious.
do that. We're all forgetting. It's Friday. Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn or Overcast or Downcast or whatever podcast catcher that you use. All the way to subscribe are on our show page at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can hit us up on Twitter. I am at Megan Morrone.
And I am Jason Howell. Thanks to Brian Burnett, technical director of today's episode. You're awesome, Brian, particularly for things like that.
No problem.
Yeah, that is a great outfit.
Jonathan Strickland in the Martian suit. Very good stuff, as well as all the folks who work behind the scenes to bring the show to you every single day. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. And we will see you on Monday. Bye, everyone.
High five.